I know that many of the lovely faces I have already met before, but just in case there is anyone new, my name is Ahmad, and I do the academic support for McGraw Hill. So let me start by just setting the stage and making that link for the rest of this session today. So let's recall a few of the points that I have picked up from the two sessions you saw this morning. One by DJ this morning, which was about pedagogies and what is the latest in pedagogies and how we can expand, how we can use them. And I've picked up these 3 points. One of them is the student discourse. And I think he talked in a very lovely, in a very nice way about what is discourse and why it is important. And I think you don't need DJ or me or McGraw Hill or anyone to tell you about that, because I think we've been doing this for a very long time. This is what a good teaching can be. You start your class by making sense of something that they know about, they can talk about, and then make that as authentic as it can be for their learning. And the more it makes sense, the more it answers that huge question that I had, you have, everyone have. Why are we teaching us this stuff? What do we do with that? So I really love the idea that now it's the time, it is easy to answer this question. Why are you teaching us math? Why are you teaching us science? Why are you teaching us social studies? And so on. The other point that was very critical that he talked about is data collection and how important data collection to be used in your teaching learning process. Specifically when it comes to identifying my groups of students. So if I can base that on authentic, real, reliable data, that can probably help me a lot in my differentiation. And he talked about one interesting trend in teaching and learning, which is mastery-based learning. And he mentioned that we cannot just wake up in the morning and do that. However, it is our ultimate objective. We always would like to teach, and at the end of a lesson, of a week, of a term, and the academic year, is everyone reach that mastery. So I'm keeping this in mind to reflect to the rest of the session today. In the other, the group, AMSL group, talked about differentiation. So I picked up this equality and equity that they mentioned, and how important to make that line between what is equity and what is equality. And they mentioned about the format of differentiation, for differentiating by content, by product, and by process. So I am always concerned about the content, so that the content has to do how it is organized, how it is presented, how it is laid out and throughout the textbook, and whatever comes with that in terms of the pedagogies that are used. I'm taking these two and start talking about reveal math. So in the part that has to do with differentiation, I can say, after looking at many other products, that reveal math has a certain level of inclusivity that actually can tackle many of the differentiation challenges. Let's go very quickly over these challenges and see if you agree upon. Actually, differentiation is not something new, but it was a very critical thing. In my days, the only differentiation I know, and probably you know, is your son needs 5 tutors at home. So each subject would need a tutor, and that's the only feasible differentiation that we can have. We know what tutors does. They actually just revise the lesson to you, solve the problems you can solve, and give you drills that you can do 100 times, and probably you are prepared for the exam. So they are doing a good job, but maybe in one task of handling the problem. They don't have an idea about how it is not actually a systematic thing that I can integrate it in my teaching learning process. Obviously, after as pedagogies evolved, one of the major challenges would be time. When do I find time to apply differentiation? Do I have time to do that? The other challenging thing is, am I actually selecting my students in the appropriate way? Am I doing the appropriate thing to know who needs what, so it is a question about the who, and it's a question about the what. So if I know my small groups, but I don't have the appropriate tools, then probably I will have a challenge to do that. Maybe that can be more complex if the problem is not actually subject related. So you have a good student in math, but the problems are coming from somewhere else. In our region, most of the time, language may be a big barrier. So they are not actually struggling with the math itself or the science itself, but probably language is a challenge. Maybe students with psychological problem, social problem, all of these can be non-academic and should be taken into consideration when differentiating. What about kinesthetic learners, visual learners, auditory learners? Extra planning, and this is again related to time. I have the time, but I actually don't have the appropriate spot or the appropriate pace in order to put that in my lesson plan. And last but not least, obviously, is the cost of differentiating. Now, if you look really about our teaching experience, do we really have a problem in knowing the subject? It never has been a problem of the subject. It never has been a problem of managing the class. Our problem is always looking after how can we satisfy parents, how can we satisfy our administrators, and on top of all this, how can I be satisfied by actually looking at a class that is succeeding? So the actual problem is not in delivering the core learning objective. The actual problem is always differentiation. Before anyone talked about differentiation, that has always been the problem. The cost of differentiating in terms of time and in terms of money. So what subscriptions I have to make with this company and this company and this company in order to bring them and support whatever I'm teaching. I subscribe to iExcel, I subscribe to teachers, teachers to teachers. I subscribe here and there, and probably if you don't want to spend money, you will probably spend a lot of time Googling and YouTubing so that you can. And then when you do that, you still have another challenge of bringing all these resources, even if you are buying them, and fitting them into your program. There is another challenge, because you might find a wonderful resource, but you still have to rework on it and redo it and customize it, fine-tune it, adjust it in order to put it in your plan. So Reveal Math supports all of these challenges in all aspects of differentiation, whether that is intervention, remediation, acceleration, and extended learning. And it's very important to identify, to know that there are multiple formats of differentiation. I just need to know when to do it, with what to do it, with whom to do it. So our claim is all of these are already set up in the Reveal Math program. And in order for me to show that, let me start by, if you are using already the program, you probably are familiar with this, but let me put it into the context of what we're talking about. So the thing is, the K to 5 that you already know is now extending to K to 8. So the lesson flow that you know in K to 5 is going to be extended to K to 8. What do I mean by that? Every chapter will start with a readiness check. So there is always a check for how much they know before I start delivering learning objectives in the lesson. And every time I'm talking about differentiation as a teacher, assessment is number 1 and number 2 and number 3 and number 10. So assessment is everything. I know the data, I have the data, then I can identify my students. So every chapter starts with a screening and readiness check, and that readiness check will be followed by intervention lessons, as we will see in a few seconds. Every lesson in Reveal Math, K to 8, in fact this is K to 12, except that the K to 12 inserts assessment and differentiation inside the reflect and the practice. So in the K to 8, the launch will take care of that student discourse. So it is presenting a big question, it is presenting, it is throwing to the students a topic to talk about, and it is making that easy to enter the lesson. The explore and develop would be the teach part, the I do, we do, followed by the practice and reflect, the you do, and every lesson has its own formative assessment. I'm going to take this data from the formative assessment and apply the appropriate differentiation. How does that look like in real? This is the readiness diagnostic at the beginning of the chapter. And as you know, in your teacher guide, every diagnostic has this table which shows every question, which skill it is testing for, and in case the student missed that question, which guided support intervention. So the first encounter with differentiation will be before you actually start any lesson. So you haven't started any lesson yet. Before I start, at the beginning of the chapter, I know who is ready, who is not, and whoever is not ready, I have the appropriate intervention resource to give that. When I do the formative assessment at the end of the lesson, every assessment data will be taken into that table, and that lesson quiz or exit ticket, so in K to 5 it's exit ticket, in 6 to 8 it's a lesson quiz. This lesson quiz results will tell me who is below level, who is on level, and who is beyond level. And for each one of these levels, there are 2 or more online and print, a group and individual resources to be assigned. Who gets what? This table is one way of how you can identify who gets what. You just look at the table and you send it to the students. Now, when we go online, we are going to see another automated feature of that. At the end of the lesson, it's time now to do the summative assessment. So what I want you to remember, at the beginning there was the first encounter of assessments was at the beginning of the chapter. It is followed by intervention. The second encounter was at the end of the lesson, and I have differentiated instruction. Which one is intervention, which is acceleration, which one is remediation? Usually it depends on the time frame that you are working with. And of course the type of gap that you have. As you can see at the end of the unit, again I'm revisiting that table that tells me which question is covering which skill and what is the intervention lesson. So that's the third encounter of differentiation that you will see in the program. Now, what about 9 to 12? In fact, this is not only 9 to 12, but you also have it for everything. We can talk about that. One of the things that came in, specifically in DJ's session, he talked about mastery-based learning. And it was, he showed that it is not something that you can do overnight. It's not something that you can implement easily, not only at the class level, but even at the school, or maybe at the general education system level. Learn Smart is one of the best tools that you can use for the sake of mastery-based learning. So let me very quickly tell you what that tool is. This is an online digital tool that is already integrated in the program. So you don't have to purchase it, you don't have to order it, you don't have to ask us to send it to you. It's already there. Learn Smart is a technology based on AI. I prefer to use the word algorithms. So it is algorithmic. It doesn't have a database. It is algorithmic. And the purpose for this tool is multi-purpose. You can use it simply for self-study. So you can assign them objectives, and it can take them into a learning journey that is personalized according to their current abilities. At the same time, it can be used to differentiate instruction. Because it is adaptive and personalized, So it is going to definitely differentiate not only activities but also instructions to your students. And or test preparation, and that includes NWEA map, because it is the same tool that we are using for NWEA map integration. So any test that you want to prepare to, this is one of the best ways that can let them focus on exactly the topics that you need them to focus on. My preferred or my favorite version of that is to use it to flip your classroom in a very easy way. So if you know that you have a certain period of time where your students are staying for a vacation, you probably can select some of these learning objectives and let them work on them. And it will take them into that journey where it scaffolds their learning while they are using it. And when they come back to school, you just have to solve them and fill in the gaps. So that can be used according to your own plan, according to your own pace. How does it work? So the journey starts from the teacher side. The teacher can select the content that you want, the scope, the range of the content that you want them to work on, for any purpose that I have mentioned: self-study and or test prep and or differentiation. So it's up to you. It can be an entire Common Core domain or more. It can be standards in that domain or more. It even can be a skill in that domain, or it can be a learning objective. So the scope of what you want them to study can go from the entire thing to the tiniest learning objective that you want to monitor. When would I send an entire domain? Probably I may do that at the end of the year. But when I am teaching throughout the year, I probably will focus more on skills and on learning objectives. For your selection, as you can see on the right, the time will be estimated. So it is telling me how much time it might take an on-level students and beyond level students. And when students receive this assignment, they are notified that you have an adaptive assignment with so many concepts that have been selected by your teacher, and you have two options to work on that. You can start looking at the different resources, study them. These resources can be activities solved, they can be the book itself, or they can start testing themselves. So whether they go to this option or to this option, they will take them to the same place while they are working. So let's see what will happen when they select, I want to answer questions, which is most probably the 99% of their favorite selection. They would prefer to go to answer questions so that they are guided. These questions are algorithmic, so they are not coming from a database. So I don't know them, I can't change them. No one knows them except the tool that is generating them. The first time they are using it, it's a type of a baseline assessment. And then it takes each student into their own scaffolded journey. The purpose of this is mastery of these concepts. So this is taking back to the mastery-based learning. So the criteria here is not a question that is answered correct, but what concept is mastered. What if I answered the question correctly and I submitted my confidence as high? What happens to the concepts? They stay zero. Why? Because I want to make sure that you know how to answer the same concept, but in a higher DOK. If you are saying you have high confidence and you're correct, let me higher the dose. So it will take them to a higher DOK. Asks about the same concept with a higher or a lower if the confidence is low. And it will keep on asking them until they prove that they are mastered. Then this will become one, and it will go to the next concept, and they can do that again. At any time, the student needs some help, because here we're testing their confidence. If their confidence is not 100%, they can always ask for this help, and this is a list of scaffolds. It's not the answer key, it is just enrichment to the concept itself. So they can watch videos, they can see guided practice, they can probably see, solve the problems. It may take them to the book itself to show them some illustrations. And then they come back and it will generate another question and take them into that journey. And here you can see where that differentiation is happening, because each one will have a different time to finish and a different number of concepts and questions to work on. You as a teacher can have these reports generated from the tool, the progress, completion time, challenging concepts, and metacognition about their confidence. Some of these may be good to share with the parents because there is no direct teacher interaction here. It is only machine learning and the student. The last thing that I would like to talk about here is something that has to do with data. And this is a new feature that is coming in our platform called MH+. Let me give you this scenario to make this easier for you. MH+ actually is a reporting and a recommendation tool. So it reports, and when I want to report, it means I am looking at data. And when I want to recommend, I want to look at this data and do the appropriate recommendation. So that's what it does. Now, what is significant about this MH+? Take this scenario. I'm teaching Reveal Math, HMH, Sava, whatever math you're teaching, but I am also using another program to support Alex, Redbird, IXL, whatever. I know that some of these standards are being tested in my day-to-day operations from the book that I'm teaching, from the quizzes, from all the assessments. And there is another report coming from the other tool that I am testing with. Sometimes you may have discrepancy between the two. The same standard is doing great here, but not doing great here. So how can I actually make this data make more sense to me so that my recommendation, so I can come back to my first point when I say, do I have the appropriate tool to find out who needs what? This is exactly what that tool is. Now, this tool is not going to bring in data from non-McGraw Hill tools. This is how this tool works. So it shows you an interactive report that has the class in the middle, the domain, the standard, and the skill. And it takes data from multiple resources. In this particular case, it is taking data from Reveal Math assessments, NWEA map, and anyone who is using Alex. So if we have any school that is using Alex, now this data is going to be collected from these three resources, and it is going to report to you what is the probability of each student that needs support. So this is very likely I have two of these students. Likely to have support are these students. So each of these dots is a student. Now, what it does next, it gives you a list of recommendations. As you can see, for the reinforce, which is below level, it already picked your students and already created a lesson for them. And it is doing the same thing for the on level and for the beyond level. So it is finding the students, and this time it is not only taking Reveal Math data, but it is actually collecting data from multiple resources. The only external resource is NWEA, and it is recommending upon NWEA as well. So it is unifying the same data, the data for one standard, and giving that recommendation upon that. Yeah, sure.
Does this new edition have something related to math?
Absolutely.
Yes.
We already are we're already partnering with NWEA. And in fact, I think I already logged in. So let me see if I can show you this. So I think I have it in here. This is the plus. just to show you the, let me show you the how NWEA is integrated. I know that. All right, so this is what will happen. So if you're using Reveal Math, you just have to tell us that you want to integrate your school account. And let's take, for example, any of these, any course. Let's take Algebra 2, for example.
We don't check. I want to check grade 8.
Which one?
Grade 8.
Grade 8.
This reveal differs from the old reveal ones. This differs from the old reveal ones, right?
No, this is the same. Reveal is only 2 years old. But what you have there is a Glencoe.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
We had reveal before, but it was different from this. Maybe 6 years.
No. Reveal is only 2 years or 3 years old.
No, we had before.
Reveal Math?
Yes,
It's a 2020 release. We started having it in 2021. It didn't exist before that.
yes, these ones. But I mean, are these the same edition from before or different edition?
All right, so this is grade 8.
Yes.
And if you go to reports, you can see map growth is integrated in here, and this is what will happen. So when you click on the map growth icon, what is happening now, it is going to the server for the NWEA server, and it will bring all the data for this class, the actual data, and it will apply recommendations according to the data that you have here. So the number that you have at NIWA is the same number that is using here.
You mean the score?
Not only the score, the student ID. The student, that's how it knows. And so it brings the ID, the scores, the red scores, and it generates. I don't have data in here, that's why you can see. All right, so all of our Reveal users in the UAE and the region are using it. So let me take exactly 5 minutes, if you don't mind, and just want to show you 2 of the features that I have just talked about. Let me go back to the new 2025 for middle school that we have. And now the middle school is following the same lesson flow as the K-5. So if you are using the K-5, it starts with the launch, integrate. So let me go take, for example, again, course 1 or course 2, any of these will work. And of course, there's an accelerated which accelerates 7 and 8. So I'm going to use, first of all, if I want appropriate differentiation, I need to make sure that at the beginning of the year, I need to do appropriate diagnostic and the placement. So this is diagnostic and the placement. Now I'm going to take this diagnostic and the placement, and one thing that I always recommend is if you go to your roster at the beginning of the year, notice that student record. I'm going to open a student record, the name and the last name and the ID, but this is what I like here. There is a proficiency level that you can assign. So what I would always recommend is at the beginning of the year, do this manually. Spend 10 minutes and do this manually, and group assign your students according to their diagnostic or your knowledge of your students. Sometimes a good student may not be in their day and they do bad, and then it's better to do that manually. And you can distribute, you can attach a proficiency level to them. That will help you later on to do the following. If you go to that roster again, so I will discard the changes. If you go to the roster, you can create groups. So when you're creating groups, by assigning this proficiency level, it will show you those below, those on, and those beyond, so you can easily select and you put them in your group. How can that help you? It can help you tracking assignments and tracking submissions, graded submissions from your students. I will go back to the course, and I want to do two quick things before we wrap up. By the way, good news, we are the closest to the lunch area. So if you see me running, know that I will be the first one to be there. So let me show you. This is course, this is grade 8, but what you see here is exactly for K 1, 2, 3, all the way up. Let me randomly take one of these chapters, chapter 3, and that's how it starts. A diagnostic test that can be submitted in an online format or a PDF format, and it is followed by the intervention. Every intervention lesson has a skill associated to it. So this skill is a skill that has been tested in the diagnostic. Then I can move on to the lesson level. So in the lesson level, let me take randomly any of these lessons. Every lesson starts with a launch, and then in K to 8, you have always 2 sessions. At the end of session 2, you have an exit ticket in session 1, and you have a lesson quiz in lesson 2. You are going to take this data, look at your teacher guide, or whatever I'm going to show you next, and use the data from this and apply the differentiation. So you have the below-level differentiation, you have the on-level differentiation, and you have the extended thinking differentiation. One very important feature that I really would like everyone to be aware about, it is already there, and it's there from K all the way to 12, is a special kind of lessons called Take Another Look. So every time you see that, it is a special kind of lessons. This Take Another Look is, in fact, lessons coming from one of McGraw Hill products called Arrive Math, and we sell it to non-Reveal Math users. For Reveal Math, it is integrated for free. But let me show you what is significant about this Take Another Look. So every time you see and Take Another Look, this is what is in a Take Another Look lesson. They follow a certain system, a systematic flow. Every Take Another lesson starts with, so you will see in the top it's 8 pages. Every Take Another lesson starts with a section called Learn. And this Learn section is 99% of the time is a video instruction. It can extend from 1.5 minutes, sometimes it can be about 3 minutes. This video instruction always comes with transcript. So for those who would like to read, they already have the reading. And this is, I think, about 1.5 minutes, almost a minute, 2 minutes. And it will give all the instruction. And then it moves on to the next section, which is Learn and Apply. And the one after it is another Learn and Apply. And the one after it is another Learn and Apply. Multiple Learn and Apply, except the last one. Can anyone guess?
Should be applied or analyzed.
Exactly. So it is an assessment. So learn, drills, assessment. This is an assignable lesson. So when your students receive it and do it, and that's how you can assign it, they can actually submit it back. Sometimes some skills can come with multiple Take Another Look. How can I relate this to my presentation? You remember when we talked about multiple formats of differentiating, multiple options. Now, besides this Take Another lesson, as you can see, there is also another PDF in there. So you have multiple options to differentiate. This is on my other browsers. Just very quickly, let me go to any of these grades. It doesn't matter which one. With MH Plus, that is going to be released soon. This is, as I mentioned earlier, a reporting and recommendation. So it is collecting data, sorting data, and giving you more Now this is how it shows. So this plus will show you this ring of circles, and the one in the center would be the grade. So let's make that, let's try to, okay. Let me see if I can log into another one. So I'm just going to very quickly show you what this feature. Just when you need it, right? It's going to do exactly what I showed you here, but I think it's not going to open. It was opening in all the other sessions. So, I hope.
This plus takes the data from the assessments and then analyze it.
Absolutely.
And give differentiation.
So not only the reveal math assessment, but it can also pick them up from NEWA. If you are using Alex, and I know, for example, many of our schools are using Alex, so if you also integrate Alex, it will take it from Alex, Redbird, and take all of this data and unify for a certain standard, make a unified evaluation for that, and send a recommendation. All right? Exactly. And then identify the student and at the same time give you the appropriate recommendations. So obviously there is something wrong here. Unfortunately, it's not opening. I don't know why, but we will be happy. This is again not a product. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. With regards to the diagnostic that's conducted at the beginning of the lesson,
Yes.
that would usually diagnose for that lesson specifically. Is there anything in the math assessments that will diagnose sort of for foundational math skills?
So
Like if I want to do a standard, benchmark assessment for all grades 1, 2, and 3, so
All
give
right.
me what foundational math skills the student is lacking, so that my intervention can be based on
this
that.
is exactly why I mentioned earlier that when you use these diagnostics, try as much as you can, never touch them. Keep them as they are, because they are exactly testing for the appropriate and the needed standards, foundational skills, and of course it depends at which time of the year you're doing that. So if you're doing this at the beginning of the year, for the placement one, it is definitely testing for previous year. And then, as you already know, Common Core, what's significant about that spiral, right? It keeps that spiral very, very solid from one chapter to another. So they are definitely testing for that. The placement would be at the beginning of the year, and I'm sorry to do that to you all, but I promise you just to show you, this won't take more than 1 minute exactly. You remember this recommendations thing? So what I mentioned is you do that recommendations, and you can see it in that table in the teacher guide. But there is also another way. Look at this. If you do a readiness diagnostic or any diagnostic or even any assessment, look at the data that you can get. So if I click in the under assignment, look at this tab. Did you see what happened here? I clicked on the diagnostic, and in the details of this diagnostic, among the details, is a tab for recommendations. This will automatically show you, according to the data obtained, it will show you the students with, so that is actually replacing that table in your book. So you don't have to look and say, okay, let me assign these people. It will immediately do that to you. And of course, it will show you the standards in the reports. If you go to reports, it will show you a standard report on what happened. Does that answer the question? All right, great. If you're enjoying this, we can go on until 6 p.m. There's a lot that I can tell you. And I was really very happy to meet you today. Thank you so much. Thank you.
What about the accelerated 7 and 8? How can we, are you coming to our school? Or?
Absolutely. Anytime you want, yeah. Yes, we'll talk about that.
So the
Sure.
accelerated 7 and 8, 7 will have some topics from 8 and 8 will have algebra.
Exactly. So this is how it works. We have 6, 7, and 8 as one option, the regular one. And then we have an accelerated option, which is 6 will stay 6. Why? Because it is a bridge between middle school and 6. The accelerated will accelerate 7 and 8 and make them one grade, and it's offered in grade 7. So now grade 8 is free. What do you do with that? You bring in algebra 1. You bring everything down, so you have a spot for calculus, for example. So grade 12 now is free if you want to do calculus. Exactly. Or AP. If you are merging algebra 1, 2, and geometry, you can take AP. I know that you're doing a great job at your school, and you have a good organization. Yeah, why don't you take a look? We can send you. Louise is here. She can send you demo logins, samples, arrange samples. Yes, ma'am. So that's a great question. So you're talking about MH Plus particularly, right? MH Plus is already launched. So now this is going to be in the new order. Whatever you order, that can be included in the order. I think there is a very tiny, it's very tiny, almost negligible fee on that, but it's maybe 99 less than its real worth. Yeah.
And the science, we have same features as reading math, because I always find that
In science.
Reading math is,
So you're a homeroom teacher.
no, I'm head of science.
Hand of science, I'm sorry. You are very right. The only thing, we have them the same. So Learn Smart is already in science. Aniwa is coming on the way. It's taking a little bit time because the 3D is so much complicated. It needs a lot of testing. So hopefully that can come up anytime next year. But since it is already in English and math, it's definitely going to be in science. We hope so.